111 years ago, the RMS Titanic set out on its maiden voyage with more than 2,200 people aboard. But tragically, only 706 of those passengers made it out alive. And ever since, many believe that anything associated with the fallen ship carries an evil curse. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Kennedy, and today on Most Amazing, we will be counting down some of the scariest ghost stories, legends, and coincidences surrounding the infamous sinking of the Titanic. So, without further ado, this is the top 10 scary Titanic curses that haunt the ocean. Starting us off at number 10, we have the final resting place. When it comes to Titanic-related hauntings, it should come as no big surprise that the actual site where the tragedy occurred is considered one of the most haunted spots of all. According to those who have visited since the fateful day, strange sights such as odd glowing orbs of light can be seen floating around at night, and many believe they are actually the spirits of those who died at sea. But that's not all. Deep sea vessels that have explored the area near the sinking have reported to receive eerie, faint SOS calls that fade in and out, and seem to have no traceable source. Could they be the ghosts of the fallen crying out for help? Many definitely believe so. Now, orbs of light and radio static are nowhere near unheard of when it comes to suspected paranormal activity, especially when you're dealing with a place such as this, where so many people have perished. However, the most terrifying curse of all has to do with an old legend that says if you aren't careful, the lonely ghosts in the sea may just pull you overboard to live the rest of eternity with them. So just be safe if you are sailing in the area. Coming in at number 9, Titanic's builder. Inside the Titanic exhibit in the Luxor Hotel is a portrait of a man named J. Bruce Ismay, who was one of the builders of the Titanic many years ago. However, the thing about Ismay was that he's not really what you would describe as a hero. Apparently, he fled the sinking ship, leaving women and their families behind, and witnesses on the lifeboats claim he kept his back to the ship as it descended. But worst of all, it's said he was the one insisting the ship speed up after receiving ice warnings, and as a result, it's believed he is not terribly liked by the ghosts who did not survive the disaster. In fact, one morning in particular, as the crew came in to open the exhibit, they found the portrait of Ismay on the floor. When the manager watched the surveillance video from the night before, he was stunned to see the picture began shaking before coming off of the wall, seemingly all by itself. Many believe that those who perished that night haunt the exhibit, tearing down his photo, and some believe that if you aren't careful, they may just curse you for being associated with him. Coming in at number 8, no Pope. So this next one is kind of a full conspiracy, but you know what? I just couldn't help myself. Apparently, one of the myths that supports the idea that the ship was cursed comes from the ship's number. The number in question was allegedly 390904, but some Catholic employees who built the ship were distressed at the time as the number, when viewed in a mirror, appears to say no Pope. Apparently this meant that the ship was cursed and godless in their eyes, and that, coupled with someone allegedly saying that God could not sink the ship, made for one giant cursed vessel. To be honest, I'm not sure how much of this myth is based in fact and how much of it is a glorified legend, but I'm not out to tempt fate in the same way the Titanic did all those years ago. Coming in at number 7, Ghost of the Titanic. One can assume that there are as many ghosts as there were fatalities associated with the infamous sinking of the ship, but one of the most famous is thought to be that of Frederick Fleet. Frederick was a British sailor serving as the lookout aboard the RMS Titanic, and it was Frederick who actually spotted the deadly iceberg and warned the bridge. But tragically, as we know, his warning came too late and the ship was not able to avoid the disastrous collision. However, the saddest part was that although Fleet survived the sinking of the Titanic, he suffered deeply from depression, in part to his survivor's guilt, and tragically his depression only grew worse over time. Finally, after his wife's passing just after Christmas in 1964, and the shortly followed eviction from his brother-in-law, Frederick took his own life. Following his death, he was buried, but strangely his grave remained unmarked until the Titanic Historical Society erected a headstone for him in 1993. These days, however, it appears his spirit is not quite at rest, as witnesses have claimed to see him keeping watch over the Las Vegas exhibition's promenade deck, perhaps driven by his guilt to watch even in the afterlife. Next up at number 6, a ghost on board. Back in 1977, Second Officer Leonard Bishop of the SS Winter Haven gave a tour of the ship to a man who he naturally assumed was a passenger. Apparently the man was British and very soft-spoken, but extremely interested in every detail of the vessel, almost unusually so. Bishop found the man to be a bit strange, but didn't think much of it, and continued to tour him around. But it wasn't until a few years later, when he saw a photo of Titanic Captain Edward John Smith, that Officer Bishop realized why the situation felt so off. Allegedly, he exclaimed to a friend, "I know him, I gave him a tour of my boat." But the friend laughed and explained to his friend that the man had been long dead and that the man he claimed to know was the captain of the Titanic. Turns out the captain still remains at sea and likes to check up on the passing boats. Let's just hope he's not looking to be vengeful. Coming in at number 5, Lady in Black. Almost any haunted location has some kind of Lady in Black. I'm not sure exactly why, but it just happens to be part of the brand. And the Titanic Artifact exhibition is no exception. Employees and guests alike all claim to have seen this mysterious woman. And it's said she wears a black period dress with a white collar and her hair in a bun. However, the most eerie of stories surrounding this ghost has to do with a photographer. Reportedly, he was getting ready for the opening of an exhibition when he spotted this woman casually walking down the grand staircase. He was understandably startled, as he hadn't noticed anyone enter and the staircase was roped off, but he just assumed he must have missed her come in and that she was a part of the exhibit. So, trying to be friendly, he asked if she'd like him to photograph her, but she ignored him. So he went back to setting up. But suddenly, she was directly behind him. So again, he offered a photograph. But this time, she didn't just ignore him, she vanished right before his very eyes. It's believed she is a ghost of a woman who died on the ship, and while no one knows exactly who she might be, let's just hope she's not a dangerous spirit. Next up at number 4, a premonition. As the legend goes, on the very same night the ship went down, a young Scottish woman by the name of Jessie was on the verge of dying. It's said that in her delirious state, she supposedly spoke of a massive sinking ship and a man named Wally playing a fiddle, despite the fact that she would have no way of knowing the Titanic would sink that night. Unless she was placing some kind of curse, that is. I have to say the most insane part of the legend is that a man named Wallace, aka Wally Hartley, did indeed play his violin one last time as he and his band went down with the ship. Let's just hope some woman on her deathbed wasn't the reason this all happened. Coming in at number 3, the unlucky mummy. One of the most well-known alleged curses surrounding the Titanic is that of the unlucky mummy. Now, for a little context, approximately 1,000 years before the time of Christ, a woman who has since been dubbed a priestess of the College of Amun-Ra was born in the city of Thebes, Egypt. And it is believed this mummy is her embalmed body. Now, in terms of the unluckiness surrounding her mummy, in the late 1890s, archaeologists discovered the burial site during a dig near Egypt's lost city of Luxor. According to legend, a rich Englishman arranged for the purchase of the mummy and her casket. However, as reported by the Museum of Unnatural History, the man inexplicably vanished before his purchase could be delivered. Then later, all 3 of his travel companions suffered misfortune. One of the men died, another was disabled in an accident, and the 3rd suffered financial ruin. From that day forward, it was believed that anyone or anything that this mummy came into contact contact with would be cursed by misfortune, and rumors suggest that the mummy was eventually purchased by an American archaeologist who arranged for it to be transported to the United States aboard the Titanic. So, for all we know, some ancient cursed mummy could have cursed the ship and sent it to its dark fate. Coming in at number 2, missing tourists. If there was ever an argument to be made for scary curses surrounding the Titanic, then this next story is probably the one I would pick. You may or may not have seen and heard the terrifying story that is unfolding as we speak, but essentially there was a tourist submarine that set out to tour the wreckage of the Titanic that has now been missing for over 48 hours. The missing vessel has 5 people on board, including British billionaire Hamish Harding, French diver Paul-Henri Nargeolet, Pakistani entrepreneur Shahzad Dawood with his son, and the final passenger is believed to be Stockton Rush, the founder of Ocean Gate Expeditions. The submarine dove down on Sunday morning, but after only an hour and 45 minutes into the tour, they lost all communication. Now, besides the obviously nerve-wracking part of this all, what is really scary is that according to Ocean Gate's website, the submarine can only last for up to 96 hours underwater with 5 people consuming oxygen. So the clock is ticking for the search and rescue team to try and track down the disappearing vessel before it's too late. It is truly a horrific and nightmare-inducing situation, and many believe that the waters surrounding the haunted ship are to blame. And last up in our number 1 spot today is the wreck of the Titan. There are many conspiracy theories surrounding the Titanic, one being that it never actually set sail, another being that it deliberately sunk. But to be honest, none of them really hold much validity. However, there is one interesting conspiracy theory, and that is that a man named Morgan Robertson actually predicted and potentially even cursed the infamous ship when he published his novel The Wreck of the Titan in 1898, 14 years before the real-life disaster. Now, to be clear, Robertson rejected any claims stating that he had something to do with the disaster, and insisted he was just drawing on his own real-life experiences as a sailor. But I have to admit, some of the similarities between his story and the real-life events are a little creepy. For example, even if you ignore that they had similar names, the fictitious Titan, like the Titanic, was supposed to be the largest of its kind and an unsinkable ship. Plus, it also lacked enough lifeboats to accommodate its passenger load, and struck an iceberg while going too fast in the North Atlantic. And as if that weren't strangely similar enough, both disasters took place in April and cost thousands of people their lives. So, do you think this book was some kind of curse on the ship, or just a really creepy coincidence? Well, that's all I got for you today, my friends. Thanks for tuning in to another video on Most Amazing. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button on your way out, and let me know down below what other curses about the Titanic you've ever heard about. I'll see you next time.